Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Before we begin, I want to introduce our team joining us for tonight's conversation. I'm Chief John Schick, and with me this evening is Commander Chase Leonard to my left here. He leads our Support Services Division. Commander Leonard oversees all of our agency's support systems, including the Flock ALPR platform that we're going to be talking about this evening. And he ensures that the tools that we rely on are used responsibly, effectively, and in alignment with our community's expectations. I also want to take an opportunity to recognize our co-producers. Off-screen, Ms. Kathy Herron, who's monitoring your Facebook comments, and Brandon Mars, who is our technical producer this evening, keeping everything running smoothly behind the scenes so we can focus on your questions in this important discussion. Now, before we dive into the details, I want to begin with a thought that often surfaces in the conversations about technology, privacy, and public safety in general. Many of you have probably heard of Benjamin Franklin's well-known line about those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety don't deserve either. It's a quote that gets invoked frequently in modern debates about surveillance and government power. Historically, though, Franklin wasn't talking about privacy and policing at all. He was arguing about colonial tax authority. That's another subject that I'm not going to get into this evening. But the spirit of the quote still resonates because it captures something important that we're going to dive into this evening. People want to know that their freedoms aren't being traded away in the name of safety. And that's a fair concern. And it's exactly why we're here tonight. Our goal is not to ask you to choose between liberty and security. Our goal is to show you how we can and must protect both. The Flock system that we leverage is a tool, not a surveillance program. And tonight we'll walk through what it does and what it doesn't do and how we safeguard your rights every step of the way. With that, let's begin. Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for joining us for this community conversation about the Flock safety system. What it is not, and how we're approaching privacy, accountability, and we'll also dive in a little bit to the future legislation that's also kind of trying to keep this in balance. My goal tonight is simple: to give you a clear, honest explanation of how this tool works, how we use it, and how we protect your rights while keeping our community safe. So what is Flock? Flock is an automated license plate recognition system, a tool that helps identify for us vehicles connected to crime. It captures a still image of a vehicle as it's going through the camera, the license plate of that vehicle, basic characteristics of the vehicle like color and type, the date, time, and location of the detection. It does not capture video, and it does not identify people. We use Flock for things like stolen vehicles, hit and run investigations, violent crime investigations, missing or endangered persons, and in some cases, suspects fleeing a crime scene. In many cases, Flock gives us the first investigative lead when we otherwise have absolutely nothing to go on. Flock helps fill that gap between information and action. So let's talk about, give you a couple examples of real CCPD success stories to give you a sense of how this system works in real life. Here are a few recent examples from right here in Canyon City. Hit and run case solved within minutes. After a hit and run call, an officer used Flock to locate the suspect vehicle within minutes. The image showed fresh damage consistent with the victim's statement. The suspect in that case was quickly located and a summons was issued. A domestic violence strangulation warrant. We finally located a suspect. An officer had been trying to serve this warrant for domestic violence strangulation on a suspect who lived in the county and consistently evaded our contact. Using Flock, the officer identified the suspect's work-related travel patterns and ultimately located him in the city at a local drive-through restaurant. The suspect was apprehended in the drive-through line and taken into custody. A stolen vehicle recovered in real time. Flock alerted officers to a stolen vehicle out of Woodland Park. Because the system picked the vehicle up in real time, the officer quickly located the vehicle. After a short pursuit, the vehicle was recovered and the suspect was arrested. A suicidal subject. After a report of a suicidal subject, an officer leveraged the Flock system to track the individual's vehicle through Canyon City and eventually out of the city limits. This allowed officers to locate the person at a residence in Florence and ensure their safety. These are real cases involving real people in our community, and they demonstrate the difference between surveillance and investigative value. Flock is not watching people. It is helping us respond to crime, protect victims, and save lives. So let's talk a little bit about what Flock is not. Let me be very clear about what this system does not do. It does not use facial recognition. It does not track individuals. It does not monitor everyday movements. It does not enforce traffic violations. It does not identify drivers or passengers. Now, I will tell you that the camera can detect people inside the vehicle, and as we recently discovered as Commander Leonard and I were examining some of these pictures, you were able to potentially identify somebody visually if the light is in optimal conditions, if there's no window tint, and it's not easy to do. All of those factors really have to be perfectly kind of laid out. The best you get sometimes is you can identify whether you have one passenger in the vehicle or two. We do not share data with federal agencies without a law enforcement or lawful criminal justice request from that agency. This is not a surveillance system. It is an investigative tool, and it is only used when a crime has occurred or when a legitimate law enforcement purpose exists. And it is not used exclusively. Each criminal act must have some corroborating information accompanying the justified use of the Flock system, meaning we cannot act exclusively on information provided by that camera still photo. We have to have not only a crime, a reported crime, or a public safety need, and there has to be corroborating information that supports what we're seeing in Flock. We don't act on Flock information solely. Anything to offer, Chase?
No.
As we're talking about that, I mean, you helped me. You were the one that brought up the identifying the drivers and what that looked like. Do you have anything to offer?
No, I mean, I think the purpose of the investigative tool is to assist us in what crimes we're looking at, what crimes we're trying to solve, and usually that's done through vehicle information, license plate, color, unique identifying factors.
Yeah, and again, it's important that we have that corroborating information. We don't act on the camera reports or the system reports exclusively. So how are we at CCPD protecting your privacy? The Canyon City Police Department maintains strict control over all data generated by our cameras. We own the data. We control who can access it. We log every search. We require that legitimate law enforcement purpose and corroboration, and all data is deleted after 30 days unless it's tied to an active criminal investigation. We do not share data with immigration authorities or federal agencies unless that criminal nexus exists and we get a lawful request. We take your privacy seriously, and our policies reflect that. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. Flock's use of anonymized data. That word is catchy. Now let's address the question that many people have raised, and rightly so. Does Flock use data from Canyon City to improve their system? The answer is yes, but only in an anonymized form. I have trouble with that word. What's that mean, anonymized? That means no license plates, no names, no case information, no agency identifiers, no way to trace the data back to a person or a vehicle. They strip all of that information and they use the remaining information to help build out the capacity of the Flock system. What remains? What are those things? What remains are general patterns that help improve the accuracy, such as vehicle shapes, time of day trends, how often the system correctly identifies a plate. This anonymized data is not accessible to CCPD or any other agency. Kathy, we have any questions yet?
We do.
Do we?
Yes. Christina Starica is asking how and where is it being used or placed?
Great question. Well, Chase, you want to address that?
Yeah, Christina, I appreciate the question. So currently we have 15 cameras. There is a transparency portal that we'll talk about later, and it identifies exactly how many cameras that we have. So we have 15 stationary cameras, and it integrates with our license plate readers in our cars. So 15 standalone cameras, and then the dash cameras that are associated with each of our vehicles. All of those combine to make up this platform. Hopefully that answers your question. As far as placement, we've tried to strategically place those around city limits to help us in the best way possible identify those crime trends that we're talking about. So hopefully that answers your question. Did you have
Are there, what does that look like, that net, Chase? Have we worked to cover every point of ingress and egress
We have.
throughout the city?
Yep.
Yeah, Chase spent a lot of time working with Flock to identify these areas so that if somebody's committing a crime in our city or someone's committed a crime and coming into our city, we're raising the chances of our being able to intercept them and take them into custody. Any other questions? It's the only one? So let's talk about why Flock often raises concerns nationally. Across the country, privacy advocates have raised concerns about companies retaining the anonymized data indefinitely, the possibility of re-identification, and the potential for misuse. These concerns are not unreasonable. Technology evolves quickly and laws often lag behind. And that's why we're taking a proactive approach. There's some legislation that's before the Colorado General Assembly, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But these are all valid questions. In terms of that anonymized data, yeah, that's a logical question. But our contract offers parameters that kind of outline, no, not kind of, but exactly outline how that data is to be used, how that data is to be anonymized. So we feel relatively confident that what we're telling you is true and accurate to the best of our ability. Now there are some legislative and contractual concerns as we're going forward. As we approach our contractual renewal in June, we are reviewing several key areas. That data retention is a key aspect that we're looking at. Should that anonymized data be subject to the same 30-day limit we follow locally? a big thing in that national conversation is in our contract it uses language like irrevocability, and we're looking at trying to establish a revocability clause in that contract. Should the license of Flock receive be revocable when we end our contract with Flock. Transparency. Should Flock be required to disclose what anonymized data they use, how long they can retain it, and what it's used for? These are all things that we're considering and we're looking at. Local control. Should agencies have the ability to opt out of contributing that anonymized data to statewide system development? These are the kind of questions we're evaluating, and your input matters. I've heard from folks across the city individually, and I've talked to some groups that have expressed these concerns. And again, these are very legitimate concerns, and we want to hear from you. So your input matters. But we're working hard to try and make sure that we leverage this technology in a very responsible way to continue delivering that very high level of service to you as a community. You want to offer anything, Chase?
I agree with what you're saying. I know that we had a couple more questions come in, and I'm happy to answer those if
good.
you're
Yeah,
interested in that. So, Christina, to AI scanning, yes, Flock does use AI-powered cameras across the country, again, to assist in those crime prevention efforts and public safety efforts. So hopefully that answers your question.
Well, those AI capacities are important for vehicle recognition. These cameras, not only can they read those plates, but they can, based on that AI capacity, trigger us to specific makes, models, colors of vehicles. They can go as far as identifying vehicles with, let's say you have an armed robbery and somebody gives you a general description of a white sedan, 4-door, but then they pick up and they recognize that there was a particular damaged part on the vehicle or a bumper sticker in the rear window. We can plug that information in, and those cameras can help assess hundreds, if not thousands, of vehicles simultaneously, and give us a potential possible lead to help identify our suspect.
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
that part of that AI
It is.
capacity?
And to that end, I think somebody else had asked a question and taken it down, it looks like, but there was a question about who monitors the cameras. And so each of our officers
Great
has
question.
access to look up specific things that they're looking for these cases that we're talking about. So I just want to be clear on general monitoring. Like we said, it's not a surveillance system. So our folks are not just logging in there and watching traffic as it passes these cameras. That's not happening. That's not the intended use. What is happening is we're collecting information case specific to the calls that they respond to. And in the event that the Flock tool would be of use to them during this case investigation, they would plug in whatever that information is. So I believe the chief covered a good example earlier about a hit and run traffic accident. So those specifics about the vehicles that were involved, because one of them had left the scene, they were able to utilize the description that was given, plug that into the system, and as a result of that description and the AI generated tools that we just talked about, they were actually able to find the vehicle that was associated with this. Now, again, they have to follow up on that to ensure that that is the correct vehicle, that those are the things that we're looking for, the license plate, the vehicle description, that those things actually match. That helps us develop probable cause to then go issue that citation.
And the sensitivity and capacity of this system is really crucial in real-time investigations. When we have an event happen, that AI feature helps save precious moments to help us identify a suspect vehicle. Imagine in a crime in progress that our officers have to sit there and watch every single vehicle go through every one of those 15 cameras, and we could be talking about anywhere from several hundred to several thousand vehicles So that AI feature, that component, is pretty critical in those precious time moments, after a crime's been committed, to help us get somebody into custody quickly. So great question. I'm glad we got that. Do we have any more?
We have two looks there. James, have there been any mistaken pullovers or arrests? Not that I'm aware of.
Great question.
That is a good question.
No, we, knock on wood, I'm gonna find some wood. We haven't had that yet. Our folks are, they get initial training, we have a policy laid out, so they try and act responsibly with their system to use it as it's intended. And fortunately, we haven't fell victim. I will never say that we will never, ever make that mistake, but they work very hard at trying to avoid that. And so far, we've been fortunate that we've not had any misuse, abuse, or even accidents with the system.
And I think that's a great segue question, James, because what we're going to talk about next is what we're doing about it now.
Yeah.
We do have the broken window.
You want to talk about that, Chase?
Can you scroll down to that, Kathy?
Where
for
is
me?
that?
He says,
There was a question on broken window policing.
yes. He says, hang on just a second. If you could explain the broken window thinking as it applies to law enforcement work.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. So the broken windows theory, it sounds like you're familiar with, is basically, let's take a broken down vehicle on the side of the road. Basically, the concept is that over time, because that vehicle is broken down, it becomes more and more susceptible to crime trends, other crime activity around that. And the more degraded that becomes, the more the activity increases. Is that?
Oh, absolutely. In the broken windows theory out of NYPD, New York, started back in the, I believe it was the 70s, and they went into dilapidated neighborhoods, and they talked about the economic impact, and they started investing in those things. They started what was called hotspot policing, focused efforts by law enforcement and other city entities to change the dynamic of that community, and they found they had some interesting results as the study concluded that when you focus on repairing those things, when you focus on enforcing the laws, those communities take a turn. Their quality of life improves, crime rates reduce. So all of that is relevant to what we are doing here locally, and we'll talk about a couple different initiatives tonight that we're getting ready to roll out that I think talks to that issue, and I think we have done some really great work over the last 5 years impacting that quality of life component in our city, and we're looking to expand on that. Do we have another question?
We do. Christina, you got a lot of great questions tonight. So as far as trying to understand how it's catching criminals.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so to your point, like I said, 15 units, and then the vehicles, right?
We didn't tell them about that, so expound on that.
So it integrates with our dash cameras. So each of our vehicles is another
Roving
camera,
ALPR.
basically. So to your point, in right place, right time, part of that could be, but the system is collecting the data like we talked about. Holds it for the 30 days, but it's collecting the data. So when our officers respond to a crime, if they develop information based on that call that they could utilize the flock system for, they have access to the collected data as long as it's within that 30-day period, and they can put in that specific information that they're looking for and utilize. Flock should give them a hit back, if that's what you want to call it. It should notify them if they do or do not have matching information. So if the information does match, it provides them a list of what could potentially be a matching hit, so to speak. And then from there, the officer has to utilize that information to further their investigation. So again, it's not a monitoring of it as far as like real-time monitoring. It's developing case-specific leads, utilizing that information, placing it into the database, and then seeing if there has been vehicles matching that description, driving in any of those areas where these cameras are placed, or whether it's past one of those roving cameras that is our dash cameras.
And you've got to put that data in. You've got to feed that. So it's if you don't ask the right question, you don't get the right answer. So it's important that we put accurate information in there as soon as we get it. And again, back to Commander Leonard's point, if we go to a crime and we don't develop that vehicle information right away, that data is held in a aggregate bank, if you will, that is available to us for 30 days. So say 3 days after the crime, 6 days after the crime, we get that component, that vehicle tied to our incident that enables us to put that information into the system and start researching it. And we expand that coverage, as Commander Leonard indicated. We have mobile dash cameras in all of our police units, and they are an arm to the system because we have a link between our flock and our Axon dash cameras that make each one of those dash cameras a mobile ALPR, which have been around for a long time in law enforcement, long before we got the standard footprint of a flock safety camera stationary at intersections across the nation. So in terms of catching that criminal, we have great coverage throughout the city. But then again, it comes back to, and then, to dovetail off of that, it comes back to effective questioning of your victims, of your witnesses, cataloging all that information, and then inputting the proper information into the system to get the feed or the leads that you need to continue your investigation. I hope that answered your question. That was a great question. Any other questions? Not yet? Come on, roll them in. We want to hear from you. Okay, so let's continue. What are we doing now in terms of protecting our community, ensuring that we are that our values are aligned with our community's values, and we're doing the ethical thing each and every time we leverage this technology in this capacity? We are reviewing our contract language. Just Monday, Sunday and Monday, I started digging into our contract, and I researched some stories, national stories of points of concern, and I started digging into our contract, and I saw some comparisons that I thought I needed to bring to our city attorney's attention. So I really dug into the contract, comparing best practices from other agencies and some of the communities that have voiced concern with flock, and we're evaluating potential amendments when we talk about that anonymized data, when we talk about the irrevocability of that data. I want to see if we can modify that and restrict that. If we leave our contract, can we request that all of our data, anonymized or not, can be deleted? So we're going to ask the questions and see what exactly we can do to help strengthen that trust in our community. So we're evaluating those potential amendments. I've prepared a clear recommendation for our city attorneys, asking them if these are reasonable contractual expectations. And then we're going to engage the community openly, including through this discussion this evening. And I encourage you, if you have questions, to put them out there. Come forward. To ensure, again, we're trying to make sure that we are acting responsibly with this advanced technology in investigating criminal activity. We conduct audits upon ourselves. So I'll let Commander Leonard talk about our quarterly audits that we just started here recently.
Yeah, so there are a number of audits that we're conducting to ensure that across the department, not just with the flock systems, we're managing, things that we've received through public trust or any other method. The things that we have at our disposal, we're using them appropriately. So, flock is one of those things. I have the administrative access to that, and I can go in and actually view how our officers are utilizing the system. And so that quarterly audit looks like ensuring that they're using it appropriately, not monitoring it, but actually using it for cases that they've had reported to them.
And talk about that, Chase. Is every single use by one of our police officers, what's the kind of information that is logged and tracked in that system? Are we talking about, of course, the officer's name,
Yep.
the date, the time, the reason?
Yep.
Or what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So they have to put a reason for why they're utilizing the system. It's a mandate before they can actually even make a search. It requires them to put a reason. And that's a scrolling list of reasons. But again, it is all case specific. It is not anything as far as, there's nothing that we can do from a surveillance perspective. They can't just put, I'm monitoring this, right? They actually have to have a legitimate law enforcement reason to utilize the system. Again, case specific, so they can put in a case number, they can put in, like we described, the descriptions of vehicles, partial plate that they're looking for, any identifying information, they can put that in, but it is directly associated with that specific officer.
And tell me, Chase, so that's a back-end audit, back-end inspection. Is there a front-end checks and balances on this? Is our flock system is tied to our CCIC, right?
Yeah.
So you want to tell them what CCIC is and how that integrates with our flock, and that's kind of a front-end checks and balance
Sure.
on that.
Yeah, so CCIC stands for the Colorado Crime Information Center. This is a way for us, again, it's an investigative tool, how we run people who might have warrants.
Yeah.
In this particular case, is there a warrant associated with a vehicle? So that information is utilized on the front end, again, through a legitimate law enforcement purpose, for them to be able to utilize the system. And the warrants is a prime example. If there's a warrant associated with a vehicle, through running the plate, utilizing CCIC, we can identify if that's
And because
the case.
we're licensed with the state, we're required, and we do additional training for CCIC, which is, as you said, the Colorado Crime Information Center. There's also NCIC, which is National Crime Information Center. So this is a nationwide component, and our licensing with those individuals require specific information, and they do audits,
Absolutely.
right?
They do.
To ensure our licensing. Our goal is to maintain the public safety benefits of this tool without compromising the privacy expectations of our residents. Got a couple questions here, Chase.
Yeah, Dalton, you noted, it looks like that we were able to find your stolen building.
Yes.
That was a recent case success.
It was. Yes. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I believe, and I could be wrong, Dalton, here, so help me out maybe in the comments if I get some of this wrong. But again, I think a description was provided on what was stolen from you guys, and as a result of that, we were able to look that up in the flock system. We're able to locate that information. I believe the suspect vehicle had some key identifying.
It did. It did. It had a different color rear door on the truck. And we were able, the officer was able to leverage the general characteristics. This truck was driving around with no tag on it. I remember that. So we weren't able to get a tag off of our flock hits. But when he put in the characteristics of this vehicle and the unique characteristics of this vehicle, he was able to identify a vehicle pretty quickly. And as the investigation, and this investigation I believe took a week or so, and over that time we saw that our offender, our bad guy, was getting wise, and initial pictures that had a different color back door. A day or so later, that door had been painted over. So it was an intentional effort to try and throw us off the tracks, trail, if you will, of this offender. However, the officer was able, again, through interconnectedness, interagency operations, this officer was able to put out what we call a be on the lookout for this particular vehicle, and a peer officer was able to say, hey, I stopped that vehicle a week ago when it had that different color door, and this was the guy operating it. Through that investigative lead, the officer was able to identify the vehicle involved, identify the offender involved, subsequently wrote a search warrant. The vehicle, again, led out of the city, but the officer was able to go back to the courts and get a search warrant once they identified where he lived out in the county. And I believe he paired up with the sheriff's office, and they went out there and executed this search warrant, and they recovered this stolen property. And this was a significant property crime. This was, I believe, a $10,000 building that was stolen off of his property. So just another, and thank you for bringing that up, because that's a great example that we left out of the presentation. But that really kind of illustrates the significance of this platform and what it can provide in terms of, outside of this, I'm not certain that we would have solved this crime. Certainly not as quickly. So great question, great example. Thank you.
And Dalton, thanks again for highlighting Officer Romero's work on that. We appreciate that, and we'll make sure to pass that along.
Absolutely, absolutely. Officer Romero did a fantastic job, and he did get his letter of recognition, and that was included in his personnel file. So yes, again, thank you for reaching out and sharing that. We got another question here. I'll let you answer that one, Chase. It's pretty standard question there, and that go all kinds of directions.
And if you're not opposed, before I grab that one, I'm going to go back to Leah real quick.
Yeah.
So Leah, you said you heard that they're trying to ban the flock cameras due to the invasion of privacy, unlawful search. That's really what we're here to talk about today, in hopes that we can kind of shed some light on what's actually going on, what we're trying to do about it. I think there is some legitimate concern there, and as the chief noted, we're trying to do our level best to ensure we're doing the due diligence that you all deserve, so that we're making sure we're following, privacy laws and protecting you guys' constitutional rights.
Well, and I think it's important to note, and that great question, and it is happening across the nation, and this is illustrative of your PD command group paying attention. We've heard from a few people. It has not been a large outcry, but I still think even the lowest voice needs to be heard. So you don't have to have 100 people in front of city council. If you come up and you report to us that this is a concern or that's a concern, we're going to look into it. We're going to dig into it and figure out, do we need to be concerned? Do we need to modify our approach or how we respond to things? So this is just an example of that. Off of those few conversations, we're digging into this to make sure proactively that we are doing the very best for our community and by our community. So, yeah, thank you for that question.
And then Dan, you said, do police officers feel frustrated when judges let charged offenders back out almost immediately on PR bonds? Here's what I would say. We're human. Our guys are working very, very hard to try to keep everybody in our community safe. So naturally, that could be a reaction. Again, we have to do our job. So we're doing the best we can to continue investigating crime. So if these offenders are let out, it's our obligation to continue investigating crime if they're continuing to commit it. Other thoughts on that, Chief?
Well, yeah, they are human, and it is upsetting to officers when things don't shake out the way they hoped or felt were just. But we like to remind our folks that regardless of legislation, regardless of judicial outcomes, we first serve the community, and we can only do what we can do. And we leverage the law at every opportunity for the benefit of our community. So if legislation falls short or the judicial process falls short, that's not our focus. Our focus is in going back out and serving the community. So we don't let those outcomes. We try not to let those outcomes shape the amount or type of service that we deliver to the community. Excuse me. Most cops are too dumb to do their job without flock intelligence. Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, Orion. I think our cops are plenty intelligent. They work awfully hard. In fact, they work their guts out just about every day. These cops in Canyon City respond to about 30,000 calls a year. That's a significant number. They stay very busy, and they deliver due diligence to every single case that they work, that they touch. So I'm going to let that lay there, but I disagree with you. And no,
Any other
Ryan, we
questions?
don't violate civil rights. We work very hard not to violate civil rights. So, any other questions? So Chase, we talked about the quarterly audits. So, and we talked about our goal again is to maintain public safety benefits of this tool without compromising your privacy expectations of our residents. Chase, why don't you talk about those privacy concerns?
Yeah, so again, we're dedicated to doing the level best that we can for you all and ensuring that, again, your constitutional rights are protected and that we are protecting your privacy. Any concerns that you might have, we're asking that you actually reach out to us. If you feel like maybe this tool has been utilized, in a manner that has violated your privacy, or if you have any additional concerns about privacy, please feel free to give me a call, and I'm happy to talk about it. Again, pretty familiar with the system. I conduct these audits, and so I'm happy to look into whatever your concern might be, and get back to you on what I find.
Yeah, and it's important that we get that feedback, right, wrong, or indifferent. We make mistakes, but we will hear every complaint, and we will review and investigate every complaint, and we'll take the appropriate action to modify future outcomes, and make sure that we're applying due process to our organization and our officers and our team here. So yeah, if you have those concerns, you certainly should bring them forward. So what do we need from the community? I can't say this enough, and I will tell you the first thing that we need from the community is direct reporting of any and all suspicious activity. I cannot tell you the number of times that I'm out in the community, or I receive a text message or a phone call, and people want to tell me about something that occurred last week or a couple weeks ago. And I always ask them, did you call us? And 9 times out of 10, their response is, no, Chief, I didn't want to bother you guys. You're so busy. I can appreciate that feeling. I certainly appreciate the sentiment, but that's why we're here. So I would ask you to report all suspicious activity, so that we can resolve the situation. And if it's not an ongoing or an active situation, it may be a repeat situation. And only by receiving those reports can we catalog that information and then identify patterns or trends of things happening in our community and tailor our response, be it proactive or response, so that we can try to modify those things and improve the quality of life. So first and foremost, please report all suspicious activity. We're getting ready to launch a new campaign because I've heard this so much around the city. We've kicked this around, and Chase helped me come up with this. We're looking at a new campaign, messaging campaign to shift our culture a little bit. So it's called See Something, Say Something. Chase has worked on it. He's worked on it with our Parks police officers. We're gonna launch this initiative in a couple of weeks, and you're gonna start to see these wonderful informative signs that say just that. See something, say something. It's going to have, of course, 911 if it's an emergency, but it also lists the non-emergency number for you to call and let us know what's going on. Again, if we don't know about it, we can't help you. As much as we would like to be all places at all times, we simply can't. So that's a big initiative we're getting ready to launch. And in the interim, I just ask you to call and let us know. We want your honest feedback, not only about our response, but our work product. Again, we were just talking about this. If we fell short, we want to hear from you. If we failed to call you, we resolved a situation, but you didn't find out till days later because nobody called you, nobody followed back up with you, let us know that. When you make these calls, we have an automated text survey that goes out after the call is cleared to help us rate our performance. And we get a pretty good response. We average about a national response. I think the annual report's going to reflect about a 26-28% response, and of that, those 28% responses, nearly 70% are exceptional, and then we have, it breaks down from exceptional to appropriate, and then there's a small number of responses or that we didn't meet the mark for whatever reason. I would ask you to follow that up with a phone call to that unit supervisor or the unit commander, division commander, so we can dig into it. We may fall short and not realize it. We may have resolved the issue, but we didn't communicate effectively or something of that sort. So it's very, very important that you provide us with that honest feedback and let us know how our response was. Let us know what our work product looked like and felt like, and if you appreciate it or not. In terms of Flock or any other technology tool, let us know, again, Chase talked on this earlier, let us know what your privacy concerns are. If you have additional privacy concerns, if you have additional questions, there's all kinds of information out there about Flock. And I try to stay on top of the national concerns, national trends, through periodicals, through Instagram and Facebook, just like the rest of you. If you come across something that we didn't address tonight, let us know about it. Send us an email. Give us a call. A willingness to engage in these conversations constructively is how we maintain a solid footing for our department to provide a very high level of service to all of you. A willingness to engage in these conversations constructively, very important. Oftentimes we feel, excuse me, my throat's getting a little dry. Colorado air's hard on this Virginia boy. So, it's often a very easy thing to do to just jump on social media and pardon the pun, rant and rave. But I would rather you give us a call or send us an email and let us know exactly what the concerns are, exactly what the issues are, and let us work together to resolve that. We can only address what is reported to us directly. So before we close up, I'm getting a 10-minute signal here. Chase, you want to talk about, give folks an idea? You know, we've got policies, we've got training. We're trying to leverage this technology very responsibly, and part of that is something I want Chase to tell you a little bit more about.
Yeah.
That we're real proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I dive into that, I know that there's at least 3 new questions. If we can get through this piece, we'll jump into those before Chief closes us out. So what we're going to talk about is the transparency portal for the Canyon City Police Department. So this is through Flock. Kathy went ahead and posted the link in the chat. So if you guys want to click on that, it'll take you to our transparency portal is what it's called. And basically when you log into this, it'll tell you when it was last updated. So what I'm seeing is Tuesday, March 24th. It gives an overview of what we're utilizing the system for. And then it goes into some policies and some usage. So it tells you what's detected, what's not detected, acceptable use, like we mentioned earlier, prohibited uses, access policy, system access history, hot list policy, and we didn't necessarily identify that, but basically a hot list is if they're working a case and they have specific information, they can put it into this hot list sheet, and then other officers can be on the lookout for that information.
Would that be like that theft case?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. So it identifies some examples here: stolen vehicles, wanted vehicles, missing people, missing children, people that are endangered. Those things would populate for other officers to keep an eye out for. And then from the usage perspective, again, notes that we retain the data for 30 days. It says that we have the 15 cameras. Again, those are the stationary cameras, not the ones mounted in our vehicles. What hot lists are alerting on, and then unique vehicles detected in the last 30 days, and how many hot list hits we've had in the last 30 days. And that updates, like I mentioned. So that is what we're currently utilizing the system for, the parameters in which we're allowed to use it, and that this website, this portal, is meant to be as transparent as possible with you all. So again, if there's something on here that you maybe take exception to or don't understand, please give me a call. I'm happy to answer any of those questions and walk through that with you.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, let's jump into these questions before we close out here. Dan, explain why the sheriff's department is in town doing law enforcement and not outside of city limits doing it. Well, that is a great question, Dan. Well, but I need you to keep things in perspective. While Canyon City is an incorporated city, it still resides within Fremont County. Sheriff Cooper and his deputies have every right and authority to come into the city and exercise their law enforcement authority. And we appreciate greatly the partnership that we share with them. From time to time, you will see the sheriff's office acting in a primary role, and we will be in a supportive role. And that's typically when their investigations started in the county. You know, our bad guys, our offenders, they know no jurisdictional boundaries. They don't respect them. And likewise, we just talked about an example where a case started in Canyon City and our Canyon City officers ended up in the county as a primary officer, completing an investigation. So it may seem odd from time to time to see county deputies in the city limits exercising their lawful authority. There's nothing to be alarmed or concerned about. We share the mission of public safety equally. We are all driven to deliver that high level of service and do it in concert in a safe and effective way. On a lighter note, what's the chief's favorite past or present police TV drama? Oh my. There's a lot of them. My favorite all-time, I think, would have to be NYPD Blue. I started watching that a long time ago as a very young officer and learned quite a bit about what to do and what not to do. So thank you for that question. Do you, Anthony, thank you, Anthony, do you feel like your hands will be tied even more if SB 26070 comes into play? Great question. There are 3 legislative considerations up at the General Assembly right now, and you know, we respect our legislators. I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. Everybody's trying to catch up to this very fast-paced, advanced technology that's emerging across so many different occupational lines. Law enforcement is not exclusive. And you know, they're trying to make sure that, you know, they, by statute, are checks and balances. So they're trying to make sure that they're being thoughtful and considerate and putting in place responsible legislation that can help protect our community's privacy interest and make sure that law enforcement efforts or actions don't go unchecked. I do have some concerns. The Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police, and I venture to say if you ask Sheriff Cooper, we all have some concerns about some of the restrictive bandwidth of this legislation. I don't think it's necessary, I don't think it should be necessary to obtain a search warrant to retrieve the data from these flock systems. As we said, we have front end and back end checks and balances through our licensing through the state and our national interface. So, you know, I am concerned. Those 26070 you're talking about requires warrants for certain ALPR search warrants, or I mean searches. It also requires, there's a bipartisan ALPR that also requires warrants, and that one also tags drone surveillance, which, you know, is an entirely different layer. Chief Noller over in Pueblo is really cutting edge on all of this with his real-time crime center, and rightly so. They've got more than their fair share of problems over there. But you know, he and his city have invested greatly in their drone program, their real-time crime center, and they're making some meaningful impacts in their community. So I hate to see legislation that might hamper that. I'm all for checks and balances. We all have to act accordingly, and I think every chief and sheriff is. But I question some of that expansion. So, do we have anything else?
Yeah, if I may, I'll address the 2 questions from Orion, if that's
Okay.
Yeah, Orion, I appreciate both of those. To your point, suspicion is not a crime. You noted, you're saying that you'd like to illegally detain people based on unbacked allegations. That's not what we're saying.
No.
We do have to have reasonable, articulable suspicion to make a contact outside of a consensual contact. So in order to stop somebody, we have to have reasonable, articulable suspicion. Now, what we're talking about here is utilizing a tool to develop further investigative leads that we can follow up on before we would ultimately end up contacting somebody, making an arrest. So hopefully that answers that. As far as how can we ensure the sharing, I actually have access to that. Several other members of our command staff have administrative access, and we actually choose who we share with if we choose to share at all. So that is something that I can actually go in the system and make those determinations on if we want to share with other organizations. There are times where that's beneficial. In 2019, for example, we had a homicide case that crossed state lines. That would have been a perfect time to utilize that tool to hopefully find these parties that were involved. So hopefully that answers that.
Leah says these have been super helpful in Pueblo. Glad to see them being utilized elsewhere. Thank you, Leah. Orion again, privacy in public is not expected. Privacy in public is not, trust me, I get it. Thank you for that. Anthony, yes, thank you. Dan Elias, next time homeless problem. We are going to dig into that absolutely. We've had some great success across our community. So closing message. I'm getting the big cut it sign from Kathy over there. It's simply, Flock is a tool, nothing more, nothing less. We are very fortunate in this community through City Council, through our community being supportive and allowing us to budget for these, extended measures to help us respond and fight criminal activity. It helps us solve crimes, recover stolen vehicles, and protect victims. But it must be used responsibly, transparently, and with respects for the rights of the people we serve. We are committed to that balance. We really appreciate all of your feedback tonight. It's been interesting, it's been enlightening, and very much appreciated. We are committed to this community. And we're committed to ensuring that any technology we use aligns, again, with our values, our laws, and our expectations for your privacy. In closing, we here at the PD need our community. You are our eyes and ears. Again, we cannot be all places at all times. If you say, remember, say it with me, if you see something, say something. And finally, I want to thank you all again for being part of this conversation. It was an important conversation, and you help us every time you step up to the plate and dialogue with us. So in that, I will say thank you and good night. Chase, you have any closing comments?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you all for letting me come on, and appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you for being here with us. And again, I'm getting the devil stink eye from Kathy. I think it's dinner time. So appreciate you all. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next time.